Well, good morning and welcome to Fountain Street Church. I'm Reverend Christopher Rowe. I use he, him pronouns, and I have the honor and the privilege of serving as the acting senior minister here in this cathedral of love and this beautiful and historic temple of peace. On behalf of everyone who calls this place their spiritual home, please let me welcome you to this Sunday worship service. Today is August 15th, if you can believe that, and this morning we welcome to our pulpit Tom Logan. Tom Logan brings his perspective and his voice to this worship service this morning, and we are so grateful for that. In addition, we welcome Phil Pletcher to the piano, and it's always such a treat to have his music bring this worship service together and deeper. No matter who you are, no matter where you live, no matter what you believe in or you don't believe in at all, whether you are a Fountain Street Church lifer or this is your very first time with us, whether you live somewhere near the church or across town or across the country, no matter what your religious orientation or your spiritual aptitude might be, you, yes, you, have a place in this community, a community where love and justice, inclusion and equity are the shared work of our liberating faith. And so on behalf of everyone in this community who shares that work together, please let me welcome you to our worship service this morning. I'm so glad you're here.
I've titled this talk, My Life Story, What Was I Thinking? It highlights the ways in which intentions are intersected by opportunities and difficulties not foreseen as one sets out upon a path in life. My remarks today are offered to illustrate this fact as it has played out in my own life. I've always been interested in the built environment, especially cities. My parents were both in the arts, and my father was very concerned about the aesthetics of the buildings and spaces in the urban environment. Many paintings they both did featured architecture and urban spaces. My older brother, 5 years older, also became an artist and teacher, specializing in art metal and jewelry. I was also influenced to do artwork, although it did not take with me to the extent it did with my brother. I was definitely encouraged to work with my hands, doing such things in my early teens as helping my grandfather build a carport in our new Madison, Wisconsin home, rather than take some job on the economy. I attended a high school dominated by University of Wisconsin faculty brats, where I was engaged in lots of political conversation and debate, and was interested in history as well. I also took art, despite the advisor's notion that I was capable of a full academic load and should therefore take that instead. At the university, I signed up for a 2-year interdisciplinary survey program designed to give a broad overview of the humanities and social sciences. Some of my friends were taking the same program, and it had the advantage of featuring lecturers who were actually good at lecturing, not necessarily a common trait among college faculty. In the course of this program, I met a young lady who had been in my high school but had moved to a small town where she got her high school diploma. Her name was Ann Girth, daughter of a university sociology professor. Needless to say, this led to the biggest change in my life's trajectory, as I will describe shortly. My junior and senior years, I majored in urban affairs as preparation for a master's degree program in urban and regional planning, which I knew I wanted to pursue. 1965 was a year filled with events and stress. I started my master's program. Ann and I were dating. She learned that her grandmother's estate in northern Germany was about to be settled, which would make a visit to Germany desirable. Ann's mother, deceased a few years before, had been stressed about the relationship with her family and the whole inheritance matter. With that in the background, Ann was somewhat upset as well. On my side, the prospect of visiting Germany brought to mind a German urban planning innovation which one of my planning professors had introduced us to, the concept of zoning, allowing regulation of urban growth to be handled differently at the growing edge of cities than it was in the old center. This approach would allow taller buildings near the center, but would not allow them in the developing outskirts of the city. If Ann and I were to visit family in Germany, why not go for a longer time and prepare a doctoral dissertation on this subject? So we were admitted to the University of North Carolina, I in city planning and Ann in social work. Ann focused on community organization. Her practice placement was with the entirely black, unincorporated suburb of the county seat, where there were basically no public services at all. Along with classwork, I prepared for my dissertation research while taking German lessons. In 1968 and into '69, we were in Frankfurt, Germany, where I spent many hours in the city archives. We both spent quite a bit of time with relatives and friends in the Frankfurt area and made a lengthy visit to the family's estate in the northern region in the Jutland Peninsula, just south of Denmark. Some of you who have visited our home have seen some of the awkwardly large pieces of furniture Ann inherited from the estate. Now, here comes a clear example of the "what was I thinking" phenomenon. I received an offer from my alma mater in Madison to join the urban and regional planning faculty in the fall. Given the reason I had pursued the degree, an excuse to spend time in Germany to get to know and deal with Ann's family, I had not considered just what I would do with my training once I was done, and teaching was not really high on my list. But with a job offer in hand and no other real thought given to employment, who would not accept? So in 1970, we moved with our overlarge furniture back to Madison into a house in a pleasant neighborhood not too far from the university campus. It turned out that Ann found a social work position in nearby St. Mary's Hospital. Not exactly community organization, but professional employment nonetheless. In 1975, our daughter Kate was born, just barely before we had a plan to adopt twins, since pregnancy had not seemed to be happening. Back at the university, in 1977, it was disappointing, but not really a surprise, that I was not offered tenure. One of the courses I had started was a seminar on planning social services. This was probably stimulated both by Ann's interest in community organization and by Jim Phillips, a visiting federal employee who is implementing a new federal program in area-wide health system planning. Jim joined me in leading a seminar on services planning, quite different from the more physical, spatial urban planning which city planning normally refers to. One of my colleagues mentioned that many smaller colleges would be willing to hire me to continue my academic career. But given that teaching was not what I had been thinking in the first place, I decided it might be a better idea to get some direct experience in the practice of planning. But why not do it in health system planning, to which Jim had introduced me? After all, what was I thinking going into teaching? It was the planning that had attracted me, not the teaching. A position I applied for was in Grand Rapids, Michigan, with the West Michigan Health Systems Agency. Very likely due to Jim's involvement, I was offered the job, and here I am. Of course, there were consequences of our move that went beyond the professional ones. A colleague of Ann's in Madison, who was familiar with Grand Rapids, made the comment that we would end up at Fountain Street Church. This seemed odd to us, since neither of us, nor our parents, had any commitment to a church, nor were we anxious about the subject. Nevertheless, we decided to check out this suggestion as another way of learning about the city. Fairly early in our transition to Grand Rapids, we attended a service here and never found a reason to leave. The book about medical science happens to include this quotation: "There are some truly grand questions that our mortal minds may never be able to answer. How did the universe begin? Why is there something rather than nothing? What is consciousness?" The sermons at Fountain Street don't ask us to believe what cannot be proven about such questions, and the community has focused on the ability of society to meet the important needs of people, regardless of what they do or do not believe. In the course of our life in Grand Rapids, life developed as it will, not always seeking our permission. Ann became employed at Blodgett Hospital. We moved to a house in Heritage Hill that was designed by Marion Mahoney, who was employed by Frank Lloyd Wright at that time. The National System of Healthcare System Planning was disbanded, leading me to become a planning consultant working on private and small community projects. Hospitals merged, and Ann moved to Butterworth Hospital's infant intensive care unit, and I did some research and writing on Heritage Hill history. We both became involved in neighborhood and community committees, such as city committees and events, planning tours of our neighborhood, and other ways of supporting the neighborhood association. When Steelcase Corporation decided to purchase a historic house in the neighborhood designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, we couldn't wait to get involved. Steelcase had manufactured the furniture for the Wright-designed Johnson Wax Company headquarters building in Racine, Wisconsin. Peter Wege of Steelcase had long wanted to celebrate this connection in some way. So when Wright's Meyer-May House in Heritage Hill came on the market, Steelcase bought it, planned to restore it to its original condition and design, and open it as a museum. Ann and I signed up to become docents as soon as that became a possibility. Ann died of cancer 6 years ago. I've continued my interest in architecture, the Heritage Hill neighborhood, and the Meyer-May House. I published a book of walking tours of Heritage Hill houses. I spend time with our friend Shirley Arrigo, who has had a long connection with Steelcase and now with the Meyer-May House. And in effect, I have returned to my original interest in the shape and life of cities. The arc of one's life is not really predictable, which should not be surprising, but it can be curious and perhaps disconcerting at times. What was I thinking? For a planner who seeks order and some predictability, it is well to recognize that control and predictability are limited, and perhaps not even the richest elements of life.
When I was a kid, I would beg my parents to take us to church. I don't know why. We didn't really go to church, but I would beg them to take me, and once every 2 years they might oblige. And one of my favorite parts was the offering. And to this day, I'm not sure why, other than it seemed like an opportunity to put something into it. If it wasn't change or some dollar bills, then I would just fill out one of those comment cards just so I had something to place in it. And I think that there is an element of truth in that experience for all of us. The offering is more than just paying the bills. The offering is more than just trying to fill up the coffers. The offering is a response. The offering is an opportunity for participation. The offering, rather, is an opportunity for giving back and surrendering of ourselves in the midst of this worship experience. Every week we take the offering, not just because it's an opportunity to take a little more money from your pockets, but because it's an opportunity for all of us to give more to this church and beyond these walls to this community. As I say every week, 50% goes straight out of these cathedral's walls and 50% stays here. But that 50% that stays here is what keeps this 152-year ministry going forward. So with that spirit of offering, and more importantly, that spirit of generosity and participating and responding, the offering will now most graciously be received. Thank you, everyone, for being with us this morning. A huge and tremendous thank you to Tom Logan for the gift of your words among us, and of course to Phil Pletcher for the gift of your music that enhanced this worship service. And of course, thank you to each and every one of you who continues to show up week after week, even in this virtual reality. So with the spirit of love and justice and inclusion and equity, those shared things that we all hold together, may you go into this week with health and love, strength and resilient. And may you know how loved and held you are by this community until we see each other again. I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for being with us this morning.